Hello and good evening. Thank you all for tuning in tonight with us. My name is Malia, and I will be one of your co-hosts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I will also be your co-host for tonight.
Tonight's live stream is Depression and Therapy, an open conversation. This is part of our initiative called Project Resiliency, led by WACMA. WACMA is a nonprofit statewide organization and stands for the Wisconsin United Coalition of Mutual Assistance Association. One of our very, very special and important initiatives is called Project Resiliency, and this addresses mental health needs in our Hmong and Southeast Asian communities in Wisconsin.
So Project Resiliency has established a series called Breaking the Stigma. You can find this series on Project Resiliency's Facebook account or WACMA's YouTube account as well. The reason why we have established this series is to normalize having open conversations about mental health, especially in our Hmong community. So some of our survey findings that we have done, especially from last year, WACMA, we have collected a total of 163 surveys from our community members, which ask them various questions surrounding the topic of mental health. And some of them are 55.8% agreed that they experienced depression, and 74.8% stated that they have not sought help from mental health providers within the last 12 months. Hence why we have brought tonight's live stream to you all.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jessica. We know that data that reflects mental health in our Hmong and Southeast Asian communities is very limited, if at all, there. And so it's so important that you brought up those statistics because it just shows how important this conversation is. And we want this to be an open conversation tonight. So to help us have this open conversation, we have two very, very special guests, two amazing Hmong women who are mental health professionals joining us, Pam Yang and Mindy Koo. So let's give a warm welcome to them as they share a little bit about, their businesses, their professional titles, where you're located, and what regions do you serve in your practices.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pam Yang, and I am the owner and founder of Transformation Counseling and Training that's located in Wausau, Wisconsin, and I do serve the state of Wisconsin statewide.
My name is Mindy Koo, and I am the owner and founder of Blooming Mind Psychotherapy, and we're located in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and I serve the Sheboygan County area.
Thank you both so much for your introductions, and we're so happy to have both of you here to talk about depression and therapy and having this open conversation with us. So you both have mentioned, Pam, you are a licensed marriage and family therapist, and you, Mindy, you are a licensed professional counselor. Mm-hmm. Can you both just give a brief description about the differences between these two fields?
I can go first. So I am a LPC licensed professional counselor, but I just call myself a psychotherapist most of the time because my clinic, there's a lot of clinicians, who we all do the same things, but we're from just different specialty areas. For me specifically, I focus on psychotherapy. I do a lot of individuals and in different settings. So home, community, in office. Mm-hmm. I also do some family work too, but we're not intense. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. So for me, there are many counseling programs at the graduate level. So in order to counsel, you have to get a master's degree. And the specific degree that I sought out was a marriage and family therapy program. And that just means that there's an emphasis on working with couples, working with families. And so that was something that I specifically sought out. But yes, I've called myself a psychotherapist as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you for, that elaboration. Mm-hmm. The general public, they don't really know much about the differences. Mm-hmm. So thank you for explaining that portion. So I'm really curious, what inspired you both to become a therapist or a counselor, and in your field specifically, and how did you know that this field was specifically for you?
Yeah, so for me, I was a bilingual family/victim advocate for a couple years, and I was just seeing just the damage of violence and just how normalized domestic violence is within our Hmong community. And so for me, I was doing postvention. I was working with these families. Sometimes we would file restraining orders. We would be filing divorce papers and so forth. And so for me, I really wanted to be on the prevention the end where we give families tools and skills and teach them how to resolve conflict before it gets violent or before things get really hostile.
Well, and for me, I guess my younger self really inspired me to kind of like get to where I am, become a therapist. I was a very problematic child. If you ask any of my family members, they would say the same. And, you know, I think it's due to the fact that, you know, like our Hmong parents, they don't believe in therapy. You know, they don't know what it is. They don't know what mental health is. And, you know, so I think as a kid, I knew that there was something like, you know, like that I had something. And so it turns out I'm super ADHD. So no, I wasn't a bad kid or anything. So I had a very positive, therapeutic experience, you know, and I also want to help kids, you know, like who have struggled and they may, like their parents may not know. So I like that piece. Yeah.
Thank you so much for just speaking to both what professionally has been like your background inspired you, but also personally too. We know that this is a line of work that brings in people who are very compassionate. So I can see that the two of you, you know, just right now sharing what you did, right? Like that there are connections that you can make about the way that you were raised, some of the things that you saw in your childhood, or things that you were just connected to that brought you into this work. And thank you so much, you know, for just helping us to start normalizing talking about mental health. That's what we want to do tonight. And so to help kick us off, to have this open conversation, we have our first activity. I have not. So this activity, I'm sure some of you who are tuning in tonight are familiar with, but for those who are not, it's very simple. Well, you're going to hear a series of statements being read, and the four of us, along with all of our viewers tonight, are going to participate by responding either I have or I have not. And so, yeah, I hope this is going to be, you know, just a great way to start engaging in this open conversation.
Thank you, Malia, for, you know, introducing the first activity. So the instructions are, you know, obviously we have a paddle here. So if you have, hold out the heart reaction. And if you have not, then you hold up the care reaction. And I do invite all of our viewers to react to the live stream as well, you know, to participate and give your insights as well. So I'm going to dive into the statements that I have, okay? So I have lost interest in activities or hobbies that were once enjoyable.
Wow.
The second statement is I have felt tired constantly, have low energy, and lack motivation to do anything.
That's so interesting. Okay.
And then the third statement is I have experienced persistent negative thoughts about oneself and felt guilty without a clear reason.
Okay, thank you.
And the last statement is I have thought of self-harm or suicide. Okay. Thank you so much for, you know, participating in this first activity. I know it's a little bit, I guess you say, heavy on the heart in a way, but just kind of, you know, hearing these statements and looking at everyone's reactions to it. What stood out to you, and what kind of feelings did you feel while listening to these statements?
I think for me, yeah, it does feel a little bit heavy. I can just kind of feel some weight on my chest, and I think it's relatable, but then I also understand that we have come from so many different backgrounds and paths, and not often do we get to hear those stories.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think like a lot of growth. Yeah, I mean, it's just doing the reflection, like I was thinking back about like the times and I did feel that way and how far I've come along. So that was really great.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I agree. Especially the third statement, I have experienced persistent negative thoughts about oneself and felt guilty without a clear reason. I feel like that's really relatable, especially to imposter syndrome, right? Like growing up in a Hmong household, we were taught to never praise ourselves or not be proud of our accomplishments. And I think like because of that, I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's just really hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Like, thank you for your vulnerability, Jessica. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. There's I have a lot of negative self-talk, so I can kind of relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and you get me serious.
That's the whole point, having an open conversation about this.
Yes, it is hard to talk about. Let it out. It's okay. It's just hard to talk about. And I'm so glad you feel safe that this can be a space where you can do that. And I encourage all of our viewers too. You're not alone. As I, something that stood out to me was that we all shared, I believe, the first statement together. I have lost interest in activities or hobbies that were once enjoyable. I saw all of us raise I have, right? And it's, to me, that shows that it's much more common. Then you take some of these experiences and it's okay. And I hope that encourages other people too, to feel like it's okay to have those thoughts or to feel that way, right? It happens. And sometimes outside of your control, because that happened to you. And so, something interesting though that I do want to ask a little bit about, because I saw that, you three had answered, I have to, the question of, I have thought of self-harm or suicide. How did that feel for you to respond? Like when Jessica was reading that, like were you like comfortable? Because I know that's still something really uncomfortable for people to talk about, especially in our community. In our Hmong community, is like talking about suicide, talking about somebody who died by suicide. So, yeah, tell me. I wonder how you felt.
Yeah, for me, I think oftentimes when we're doing clinical work, we have to assess suicide, right? And we have to ask, do they have a plan? Do they have the means, intent? And so for me, I think there's a spectrum of suicidal ideation. And I feel like sometimes it's more passive, sometimes it's more active, right? And so for me, fortunately, a lot of it's been very passive where I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to live anymore. Like I want to be in heaven somewhere, more peaceful. And, but yeah, I think we all kind of go through it. So
For me, it was quite vulnerable, but I think, I think as therapists, we practice what we preach. So I think I've processed through a lot of that within my own healing journey. Yeah. So I felt like I'm okay to tell others now that I once felt that way. So that's how I felt.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
want to share?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, definitely, self-harm or suicide. It's really hard to admit that only because there's so much stigma around this statement that like, if you do feel this way, you're like crazy. And not a lot of people validate that. Right. So I think like, it's okay to have these thoughts. And I think if you do feel that way, then you do, and that's validated. And one thing that I learned, especially from one of the trainings that I've taken, working with WAGMA, is it's not that you don't want to live, you just want the pain to go away. That's what it is. And I think that really like hit me really deep because it's something that I can resonate with too.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I feel like I have to say something. That when you read it, Jessica, that made me feel very uncomfortable, to be honest. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Like, what are you three gonna say? What do they call that? Where you just like buy into whatever anyone else is. What is that term? It's like a psychology term, but we don't talk about it. But for me, what that brought up was, I don't recall ever having thoughts of self-harm, of like hurting myself, right? Or suicide. But I do have experience like supporting someone who
Okay.
Gonna make it.
Yeah.
Who has had that experience, and it's been really scary and sad to see them in that space. Yeah. But it's it's not that they want to die. It is because of a lot of the pressure. And so I realized, in that moment, it was just, wow, I'm so glad I got to be there to support them. Yeah, but it is a lot of the pressure. And that really opened my eyes to be like, wow, we need to be more kind to ourselves, more compassionate.
Yes. Yeah, and they were so fortunate to have you.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't understand because you've never felt it to that degree. Just listening and supporting is so huge.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I wish I had the tools, but at that time, because I'm just like, gosh, I think about all the stories that we hear in our community about folks who don't have someone to talk to, or they feel so alone when they're going through some of that. Yeah. So thank you for allowing me to also share. Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah, we're already crying.
Yeah. So that was good. Thank you so much, both of you, for just helping us to have this really organic, messy conversation. Yeah. And so, as all of you, are listening, we hope that, this helps normalize, some of these experiences for those that this resonates with. You're not alone. And we really want you to feel that, you're not weird, or, nothing's wrong with you ever experiencing any of these things. Depression is real. Thoughts of self-harm, thoughts of suicide is real. I didn't want you all to know that there are people who care, and that there is support. There are resources. There are folks like Pam and Mindy who are here to help those who are experiencing any of that. And so thank you so much for participating in our first activity, which already felt like more than an icebreaker. And I feel like we got to, learn a little bit more about some of the things, that personally that we connect with to this work. And so on that note, we are going to take a break. And, before diving into more of this conversation. So come back and continue to tune in with us.
If you are interested in learning more about mental health, Project Resiliency offers a variety of mental health programs throughout Wisconsin. We invite you to participate in these upcoming programs. The Hmong Pengyu Men's Support Group is located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Their next meeting will be in February. The Generational Dialogues, peer support through artful connections for Hmong families, is located in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and will occur every Thursday from February 29th through March 28th. The Fun or Theng or Ning group is for Hmong seniors in Wood County and Marathon County. Their next meeting will be on March 7th.
We hope to see you at our programs. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome back. Thank you for staying engaged with us. Before the break, we got to know Pam and Mindy a little bit better, got to hear a little bit about their background, and also, got to hear some of the personal stories and experiences when we were going through an activity. Our first activity I have not. And it just seems like, there already is such a good energy here. We already started talking about some of these really, really sensitive mental health issues that, Jessica, you read some statements about, and I just so appreciate that we're already digging in deep, diving in deep here. Both of you, kind of started sharing about some of your personal experiences as it related to some of that, some of the statements that were said. I'm just wondering, could you share a little bit more about, personally, how have you, if you've experienced depression and sought out therapy, what does that look like for you, just personally?
Do you want to start, or Pam? I can go first. Yeah. So I struggled really bad with postpartum depressions after having my son. That's 4 years ago. And I sought out therapy because it was so hard to, kind of like get out of that funk. So some of the symptoms that I felt was like no motivation to do anything. I stopped doing the things that I used to do. And then there was also like this constant feeling of guilt.
Wow.
Yeah, that was hard.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's right.
For me, I've always been like the helper. And so when my brother died in 2015, that was the first time I had experienced the death of someone so close. And it was complicated because he wasn't even in like the state. And so we couldn't see, we weren't there, and there were no goodbyes. And at that time I had a 1-year-old, and I just noticed not wanting to get out of bed, like just going through the day-to-day routines. But even like my 1-year-old couldn't bring me joy. And my husband was at a loss. He didn't really know how to help me. And so for me, I'm like, I need to talk to somebody. And that's when I first sought out therapy.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories. Kind of connecting to you, Pam, I have experienced grief too, lost someone very close to me. And I didn't like who I was as a person. I became really angry. I became, just like always mad for no reason. But I actually didn't seek out therapy until just like, I would say about a year ago. And I'm glad to hear that both of you had really good experiences. But for me personally, I didn't know how to express myself only because I grew up not knowing how to express myself. And, going to my first session with the therapist that, I was matched with, there was also this cultural barrier because this therapist was non-Hmong, and I feel like they couldn't really understand me, didn't understand the way how I was brought up, like the Hmong household. And also, and like, it's okay if you and your therapist don't work out. You can always break up and find a new one, like, and that's fine, but then that doesn't mean you stop trying. You can still, there's a lot of therapists out there. You can still match with somebody else who might, understand you better.
So thank you. Yeah. Mindy, something that I saw as you were sharing was like your face and your body. Like, I just want to say, wow, that sounds hard. Well, yeah. Sure. And I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And being a mom can be hard. We don't talk about that enough. This is just gonna be a crying time. But I mean, we're gonna let it out. So I encourage you, like, if you feel your emotions, to allow yourself to do that. Because this is hard to talk about, and I just appreciate you sharing about something so personal, like a time in your life when there's probably a lot of transitions.
Yes.
And so
Yeah. I bet a lot of people like probably have gone through it and just didn't know.
what do you mean by that?
Well, so
Yeah.
depression comes in like so many different forms. And, something like, a person who has like no energy, like another person, and that may look very different. Okay. So, yeah. And I think the symptoms, like different, like, like especially culturally, like a lot of Hmong people that I've worked with, like a lot of the depression, the symptoms comes in forms like somatic forms. Okay. So, they'll talk about like, physical ailments, right? And versus like, like they wouldn't tell you that they don't have any energy. They'll probably say something along the line of, I can't walk, I can't go walking, or I couldn't get up to do this, so it comes in different forms. People communicate it differently. And it's not too late to start therapy, even if you're 30, 40, 50, or if you're 5 years old, you could always, start.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note too that even though you have symptoms or signs of depression, it doesn't mean you're clinically depressed, right? And so there's a lot of trendy terms right now, like I'm depressed, or they're bipolar, or they're a narcissist.
Right.
And you don't get that diagnosis unless you meet criteria, and you have to have a certain amount of symptoms for a certain amount of time. And so it's really important to, get that clinical diagnosis if that is something you're seeking. And then there's different forms of depression, right? Yes. And so it can be from grief, like we were talking about, and anger, it can be a sign of depression. Also, Mindy was talking about postpartum depression. And so there's different causes for why people may feel sad and feel down, and they're all valid. But I just wanted to put that out there, that just because you have these symptoms doesn't mean you're depressed, but, for sure, pay attention to those signs and symptoms.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I feel like this, those trendy terms that you talk about, right? I hear that a lot. Like people associate like sadness or really sadness. Like, I'm so sad. I'm depressed. And so maybe they're trying to say something, right? But I'm glad you said that, so that we can make that differentiation, and so that people can get the type of support that, is really going to benefit their own journey. And I see that the both of you have been on a journey to get to where you are, both personally, professionally, as women, navigating all aspects of your identity. We had it on processing, the impact of all of that, right? And I just want to acknowledge and say, that probably took a lot of internal reflection, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do we want to talk about this?
Let's talk about it. Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
The internal work is one of the words that I became familiar with. It's like, you have to do your internal work. I feel like it's one of those trendy terms, y'all. Right?
Perhaps.
Where it's like, you got to do like your internal work, right? But what really is that? It's so important to really, remember that, like, you don't get here overnight. So I want to encourage all of our viewers as well, right? That we all did not get here overnight. It's still uncomfortable in some aspects, talking about our own journeys, but that does take some internal reflection.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And some tears. And some laughter. And that's okay, because it's messy. So to help us and to encourage all of us to do some internal reflection, we are going to do a second activity together. It will be an internal reflection activity. It really, it is what it sounds like. So we want to take some time together with you all and with our guests tonight to just, two purposes. One, we want to model what it looks like to look inwards, do that internal work. But then two, to also, really share like what it has been like to allow yourself to grow and process the things that you're going through that may have impacted your mental health. And so this next activity, we invite all of you to reflect with us, our guests and me and Jessica, to reflect on your journey. If you've never done this, that's okay. We don't want this to be scary. It's we encourage you to join us though in just thinking about your own journey. If this is the first time, start there. It's somewhere to start. So we want you to know you're not alone.
Yeah. And I just want to mention that, everyone's like healing process is not linear.
Right.
It's not like a step-by-step kind of thing. It's like what Malia said, it's messy. But then that's the way how you heal though. And that's valid. So kind of like what Malia said, going into activity number 2, it'll be internal reflection where we'll be looking into mirrors. So I do invite all of you to take the time to just maybe look into a mirror or even in your phone for just like a couple of seconds, right? So let's start. And I want you to reflect on what your path of healing and recovery has been like, as you're looking at yourself. What kind of words come to mind as you're reflecting? Okay. I guess I can start.
We could put it down.
Yeah, you can put it down. So for me, I'm not trying to be funny, but like the first thing I noticed was like my oiliness. But then if we were to reflect that, deeply, it could connect to me being very insecure too. Physically insecure, always being compared to, cousins or siblings or even friends. And I think there's like a deeper meaning behind why that was the first thing that I noticed. Yeah, so I would say my healing journey, it's a roller coaster.
So it's the word oily.
Oily. It's oily. Yep, you're going to be slipping and sliding.
Nice. Okay. What about you?
I would say that my healing journey, it's been, like a roller coaster as well. But, just thinking back quickly, I feel like there's a lot of growth. And, I like that about myself. And I think it's totally worth it. I mean, it's very, very hard. But, it made me who I am today. So it's a healing journey that I had.
Love that.
Yeah, for me, I just, I think the word resilience came to mind. Like, girl, you are still here, And for me, I find it really hard to take like praise and compliments, kind of how you were saying earlier, Jessica. Like, we're just not trained to do that. But the only person that can give me praise that I can receive from is myself, because I'm the one who knows all of the battles, all of the ups and downs, everything I had to overcome. And so I'm learning to be able to say, like, you did this. You did accomplish. It's not about being cocky or boastful. I'm not tooting my own horn. It's an internal dialogue between me and myself, right? And so for me, it's just like resilience. Like, you could have given up so many times. There were so many times you wanted to, but you're still here.
Right. Yeah. Yes, you are. You are still here. Yeah. A part of me wants to ask a follow-up to the both of you, like related to what you had shared earlier, like that time that you, when we had asked about, have you experienced depression, when you shared about losing your brother, you experienced grief, and then Mindy with postpartum depression, like what was that internal work like? After that, or working through that, do you see your word right now, resilience, roller coaster?
Healing.
Okay, healing. Like, are there connections you can make with your word right now that connect to those experiences that you just shared earlier?
Yeah, I think for me, I sought therapy because I was bursting at the seams. Like it was just so heavy and I just didn't know what to do with all of it. And so, yeah, I would say resilience because that was some of the times where I was like, it'd be okay if I didn't wake up tomorrow. But then I'd be like, well, who's going to take care of my 1-year-old? But, you just get in this place where it's just so heavy and so hopeless.
Yeah.
You.
I'm taking note. Heavy, hopeless, bursting at the seams.
Yes.
Resilience. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like that gives me a picture. Does that give you a picture?
Yeah, it does.
Love it.
Well, I think for me, like looking at the mirror, because
Yeah.
before when you were saying you saw in my face, but now that I look at myself, I've grown a lot.
Yeah. Got
So
Habs.
it's pretty healing to have.
Oh.
So I am a good mom.
Yes. Thank you for telling us that. And we're often really hard on ourselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we don't give ourselves the credit that we deserve, and it's because we are our biggest critic,
Yeah.
because nobody knows the way how we know ourselves. And kind of like what Pam said, you should be the one to, give yourself advice and the one to pick yourself up. But at the same time, we're the ones who beat ourselves up the most too, So thank you both for being so vulnerable and
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think this is important to note for our viewers, right? Like me and Mindy, we may be therapists, but we have problems too, right? And so I think so often we're put on this pedestal like, well, they're perfect. They have a perfect life. They've never experienced depression. And, I work with a lot of older clients who are like, oh, you're young. And they're talking about grief. And it's like, I've had 3 brothers die. Like my dad just died in December. And so when you're able to share those things, you're able to share like relatability. Yeah. And so, I appreciate this time for us to be able to share because we have hardship and we overcome, and therapists need therapists, right? Yeah. And so don't put us on a pedestal, but know that like we just have the passion to help you. Yeah.
And if there are any questions that comes through, Pam and I will be happy to answer them at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm an open book, so I'm glad,
Yeah. Thank you both. And, just being vulnerable and having this open conversation with us. It's really important to, talk about this, right?
Absolutely.
And people know, just collecting my thoughts,
I do want to add one more thing. I recently, and this is hard for me to share. I was asking one about this, but when my parents got divorced, I didn't know how to process that. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have shared.
Yeah.
It's good to share, a lot of the times when you say it out loud, you really let that go,
Yeah.
So instead of it festering inside you.
So I recently was cleaning. The point was, I was cleaning and I found a book of when I was in 5th grade and we had to do autobiography books. I don't know if anyone has ever done those before. And there was a certain assignment for one of those pages where you had to pick a color and write a poem about a color. Mm-hmm. And when I found them and I was looking through it, the color that I chose was black. Oh. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wrote a poem about black, and one of the lines in there was, I feel like my soul is black. Mm-hmm. But at that time, when I think about it, it wasn't something that I can recall looking back now where I felt like, oh yeah, I was so sad. Mm-hmm. Or I was so depressed. I didn't have that language. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But looking back at it now, it was definitely something that really impacted me. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a lot of reflecting.
That was.
And that was good. We had another good cry, So, before going into the next part of our webinar, which is to talk about therapy, we're going to be taking a quick break. So hopefully see you guys tune in soon. If you are experiencing emotional distress and need someone to talk to, you're not alone. Hotlines are telephone services operated by trained volunteers or counselors for crisis situations that need immediate help. These hotlines are available for you. Warm lines are non-crisis phone lines operated by peers, which are people with life experiences similar to yours. These warm lines are available for you. Welcome back. Thank you all for tuning in again. Just a little recap from before we went on our break. We had the chance to listen to our guests talk about their experiences with depression and therapy. And, we did a wonderful internal reflection activity. And so, just kind of moving forward, talking about the therapy section, right? What were your concerns when you first sought out therapy? What was going through your mind? What made you decide to take that leap?
No. To be very honest, I took that leap because I recognized that my negative behaviors were affecting the ones that I love. And that's not who I am. I'm just going through a lot right now. And I think, that is, really what made me go back and reestablish my relationship with Dawn, my therapist. But, I think the first question, what were my concerns? I was even as a therapist, even though I know about confidentiality, there is this part of me that there's this fear of vulnerability. It's I help people with this work, but yet I'm struggling, but that is okay. It makes you human.
Yep.
Yes. And I think it makes, it helps that, I take care of my own emotional baggage so that, you know what I mean? So that there's not so much transference, when I'm working with clients, because, I also have clients who comes in with postpartum depression. So that was really hard. So, that's why I took the leap.
Yeah, I think earlier I was saying I was just kind of bursting at the seams, and I had a lot of really good support, but the things they were saying was not hitting the spot. They would say, "I'm so sorry, I'm thinking of you, this is really hard." And none of that was it was just bouncing off. And so, like I said, it was so heavy. I was bursting at the seams. I'm questioning life, questioning my legacy, questioning so many different things. And so I just had to seek help. I'm this person, they've got to be able to help me. And, that brings up a point. I think for my Southeast Asian clients, and I don't know, Mindy, if you experienced this, when I get Hmong or Southeast Asian clients, they want me to give them advice or give them what they need to do. And that's hard because as therapists, we provide options, suggestions, things they can do, but we can't say, oh, leave your husband or move out of the state or quit your job. And I think sometimes Southeast Asian clients or Asian clients, they're tell me what I need to do. Because, we listen, our culture, we're supposed to listen, right? To the elders, and we're supposed to listen. And so I think that's hard because if you're going into therapy where you want them to tell you what to do to make your life better, you're rarely going to get that. And so for me, it was helpful to just talk. But there was a part of me where I was like, how is this going to help me? You know, like I'm just giving it a shot because I don't know what else to do.
Yes.
Wow, you brought up a really good point. You know, I think it also stems from like there's so much stigma about mental health within our Hmong community, and they don't know what that is. They don't know how it is to seek help, you know, professionally. And like what you said, you know, we have to obey the elders or listen to them. But then there's also a boundary that like they can't cross too, because this is professional work. And this is, you know, something that you represent, and it's your passion to want to help them, but you can't help them if they just want advice, right? And so kind of following up, right? So if a person is ready, what do they need to know, you know, to take that first leap? What do they need to know?
I would say that, you know, because, you know, like just you know, piggyback from what you guys were saying, you know, a lot of clients, you know, they're talking to a random stranger, right? You know, and, you know, myself included, right? You open up your whole life to someone that you've never met before, and they're just a complete stranger to you. But just know that everything you say, you know, in the room to them, it's confidential. And, you know, it stays in the room. You know how before I'm like, you know, say it, let it go. You know, if you say it, you let it go. And, you know, I think that stranger, right, that you will develop a relationship with, they will help you and guide you to process that. Because, you know, even though they are a stranger, right, you know, a lot of your baggage, it doesn't have to be baggage for you. And, you know, so I would say that confidentiality is key. Whatever you say will stay in the room.
And goes there.
Yeah, there's 2 points I want to touch on. And one thing, Jessica, you had said earlier, like, it's okay to break up with your therapist, right? And you're absolutely right. I think that therapeutic relationship is so important. And so I tell my clients, typically by the first session, you'll know if I'm a good fit, but I give it 3. And if we're not a good fit, that's okay, because you need someone you can trust, someone who you feel understands you. And so don't give up. Just, you know, maybe that wasn't the right therapist, or maybe they just didn't understand you. So that's really important, that therapeutic relationship is strong, that you trust this person, you feel that they understand you. And then the second thing is, I tell my clients, like, things might get worse before they get better, right? And so these symptoms, this pain, if it's taken years to develop, there's no way we're going to overcome this in 3 months or 6 months. And so that's important to note too. You might think, well, I'm talking, it feels worse. Yes, because you're bringing things to the surface, painful things. And so it's not going to get better, but, you know, just keep doing it, keep moving forward, and the healing will come.
Yes. And just like really quickly say too, you know, just imagine it to be like, you know, a wound, right? A cut, or a deep wound, right? If you just put a Band-Aid on it and you keep all the moisture in, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But, you know, if you take it off, right, you let it heal, and it's going to hurt, you know, you have to look at it, but it will heal. So that's kind of like, you know, what I always tell my clients.
Oh, analogy. That, yeah. I feel like, yes, therapy is not utilized. I don't have data for it. For our community, when I think about
That's a fact.
but hearing that, you know, I wonder, you know, do you get folks coming through that are, you know, Hmong clients? Like what percentage could you say?
Yeah, so I live in Wausau, Wisconsin, and I always say the amount, like the population, the Hmong people are in that community, you should be seeing that percentage on your caseload. I would say it's very low. I would say it's increased, but yeah, I did therapy. I was doing it for 2 years, and I had 2 on my caseload, and I think I had like 30 to 40 clients. It's starting to pick up now, I think, with the help of like WACMA, Project Resiliency, the messaging that's going out. So I do have more clients, Hmong clients seeking therapy, and I'm so excited. Yeah.
Wow.
Very tiny for me. Yeah. But I think I've been a therapist for 5 years, and within the 5 years, probably see a handful, maybe like around 30 Hmong clients. but I've seen over 500, other clients. So
Yeah. You see, so what I'm seeing is, there's a lot of mental work that you have to do from like the other side. So from the side of, someone who may be going through this and going through any kind of like mental health challenge and wanting to find some help. I heard, from you, Pam, right? This, this image you keep saying, bursting at the seams. Nothing no one said at that time is comforting. You just knew you had to get help somehow.
Yeah.
And then for you, Mindy, right? Like that persistent negative thinking, those thoughts, right? So in that time, I'm sure it sounds, it was challenging you. Could you speak to how you worked through or you are working through those challenges to show up for yourself, like every day, even if it's just a little bit, 'cause it's sometimes even hard to show up fully for yourself, whatever that even means. Yeah. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think I always tell my clients, you can rewire the brain.
Yes.
Right. And so if you're always talking negatively, you can work on that. You can start being positive. So for me, I think I really had to let go of a lot of like expectations, perfectionism, saying yes to everybody, trying to be everything for everyone all the time, because that was taking so much of me, and you can't give from a depleted cup. And so now the way that I'm working through is a lot like saying no and knowing that no is a complete sentence. I don't have to justify my no. I don't have to give you a reason, like respect my no, right? And so there's a lot of expectations that I've released myself from, but I'm still working through it because we naturally want to default to our old patterns. And so like unlearning patterns, saying no, setting boundaries, not living up to people's expectations, but creating our own expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, Pam, I would say I completely agree with you. And back to the, piggyback off of the reframing, so a big part of the work that I do is CBT. So, I don't have to go into that. If you guys want to know more about that, you can ask me. But, a lot of the work that I do is reframing those thoughts and beliefs. And, but then, to go one step back, right? But for you to be able to reframe that, you have to be able to identify that. So kind of like to help with like that negative thinking pattern, right? Identify it. I think admitting to it. A lot of people struggle with this, is to just, own up to it that, yes, I do feel this way, or, I'm sorry that this is what I did, or, whatever it is. So I would say that, you identify what it is, right? And then you reframe it. So, yes.
Yeah, and I just want to add another useful tip for when you're seeking out therapy. There are clients that are motivated and some that are unmotivated. And so those that are motivated, who are doing the work outside of session, they're going to grow so much more. They're going to progress so much more. And so something for you to ask yourself when you're going to therapy is, am I willing to work on myself? Am I willing to see how I'm maybe adding to the problem? And as an advocate, I'm never for victim shaming or blaming, but we do need to own a piece that said, well, I allowed this to happen. I allowed this person to continue to abuse me. I continue to help this person, even though they've shown me that this is toxic, right? And so the first step to getting help is to acknowledging that there's a problem, and then acknowledging what your part is in that problem. Because if you're a victim, and I don't say that negatively, but if you live out your life having the victim mentality, if you're always blaming everyone, how are you going to grow? How are you going to change? And so it's so important, like, do the work and make sure you're ready. Sometimes life doesn't give you the right circumstances to seek therapy. But I think people do kind of get to the end of themselves where they're like, it's not working. I've been doing this. It's not working. And so I just want to say, like, your therapist can help you get there, but you're going to be able to do the work when you can acknowledge and you can reflect, like, okay, something's wrong. Like, maybe I'm doing something wrong and I need to grow. Because all those people who hurt you are not in therapy. You're in therapy, right? It's self-work. And I like the saying where we say the abuse and the trauma was not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility, right?
Yeah. And just very quickly, willingness, you talk about willingness. So just know that if you start therapy or, you want to go to therapy, right? Willingness, as long as you have willingness, you'll grow, you'll just trust the process. So just act quickly.
Yes. No, thank you so much for emphasizing. I think that's such an important message for all of us to hear here in this room, and then also for all of our viewers too. There is hope. We want to let you know there is hope, but it is going to take some reflection and internal work, and there are people willing to support you along the way.
Yeah, it's just so inspiring here for people. Dang, I'm doing a lot of reflection right now too, and like it's so important to have that message out to our viewers, like, hey, like this healing process it's gonna be hard, but it'll be so worth it.
Very challenging.
Right, exactly. It's gonna be very challenging, and but the thing is, you're not gonna be alone.
Yes.
And that's the whole point. So kind of your plans, for the future, right? What are you going to be doing to destigmatize, mental health in the Hmong community? And what do you hope to see in the future?
Yeah, for me, I think making ourselves available. So like me and Mindy, we're one person, right? Like we can't see every Hmong person that wants to see us, but I think making ourselves available, for me, education is so important. So I love coming to, these sort of things where I can speak on mental health. If you invite me to come speak on mental health or different things like that, I'm happy to. But yeah, just getting education and awareness out there. Yeah. I always, I have this training, this cultural training that I do for like professionals and things like that. And I tell them, when the Hmong people were in the foothills or the mountains of Laos, they couldn't say, oh, I'm going to go to this town over there and I'm going to go get therapy. And so they don't know how to utilize or access these services because it's not something that's ingrained in them. But I think a lot of the younger generation, they're starting to understand, like, yeah, this is anxiety, or I'm depressed and I want help. And so I think education is so important. And, everywhere I'm invited, I try my best to really go and educate.
Yes. And then I think for me, like even just doing this webinar, right? We're normalizing, these conversations about mental health. And I think it's so important for us to, like even professionals, like for us to open up and, like normalize it. So I'm in this field and I feel like I do so much pro bono work to help, like normalize the conversations. But also, one thing that I'm actively doing is growing my practice. So, I have a really nice office, and the space is created to help people to, so that they're comfortable. I have a lot of Hmong workers, and that is to show them that like we're here. We look like you, we are like you, and we can understand your struggles.
Yeah. So important.
Yeah, it is really important, to create that safe space, just for people to come to you and be vulnerable and talk about their experiences and stories and cry, just making room for wet faces. That's just so important, because people often feel guilty or ashamed for crying. And it's like, crying is natural, it's a normal human reaction. And like we said, Mindy, it's good. So thank you so much for, your insights on that. And so to the viewers, kind of just hearing that therapy side from both of our guests. So after hearing that, would you be willing to try therapy? We would want you to just comment down below, yes or no. And then we will like to dedicate the next, 10 minutes to answer some questions and comments from our audience. Take the first one.
Yeah. So thank you so much for staying engaged with us. We really appreciate it. We hope this has been a good conversation that's inviting to all of you. Our first question from one of our viewers is, how can I differentiate between normal stress and something more serious like depression or anxiety? So yes, Pam and Mindy, which, whoever wants to take that.
Yeah, I can speak on that. So stress, I think stress is a normal part of everyday life. But I would say when it starts to impact your ability to function. And so if you're missing work, if you're not able to keep up with the daily tasks, I think, and you like bursting at the seams again, right? Or you're just feeling super overwhelmed, or maybe there's feelings of worthlessness. Maybe there's some suicidal ideation. I think a lot of those can be cues or signs that you may need to seek help. But I think it's important to note that everybody has a different stress level. And so you know yourself. If you know that you can't take this stress anymore and you need help, then listen to your gut instinct. Your gut will never fail you. Whereas other people, they might work in high stress environments and they might be okay. But again, if it's impacting your ability to function, work, school, home life, relationships, Jessica had said earlier that she got really angry when she lost someone and she didn't like the person she was becoming. So you're going to know, yourself. And I would say that's kind of some of the differences.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your insight on that. So the second question we got is, how do you start a conversation about mood disorders with patients like the Hmong, who are very guarded about their moods and challenges due to their mood disorders?
I can answer this. Mood disorder is one of my specialties. So I work a lot with mood disorders. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, like a lot of my Hmong folks who, they do come and see me, like, I think these conversations about mood, right? It does not start off right away as them coming in and saying that, oh, I have a mood disorder. I know a lot of them come in because of like complaints, right? Like there's certain complaints or they're doing this for whatever reason.
Is it somatic complaints?
Somatic complaints. Okay. But, you start a conversation and meet them where they're at. And if they're guarded about it, talk about what they're comfortable talking about. And a lot of the times, a lot of my Hmong clients, they're comfortable talking about their physical ailments, right? Mm-hmm. They're able to talk about like their family history. Okay. So you meet the client where they're at, and you don't have to dive straight in and just focus on the mood disorder. I would say that there's so many parts to you as a human, and so that's what I do with a lot of my Hmong clients is I meet them where they're at, and really we go from there.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think validating the mood disorder, like I think naming it with them and giving a name to it can be very validating, but it can also be very scary. And so I think you just kind of start where the client's at. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to say, oh, you're bipolar, but you're going to say, yeah, I'm hearing you're saying these are the symptoms you're experiencing, and, talking about why and talking about, how to help, right? Like coping skills and things like that. But I would agree with Minnie. You have to work your way there. You don't want to, scare your client or anything like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for those who are like, thinking it, don't be scared either. Like you come in and you're the captain of the ship, right? Mm-hmm. We as, we're just facilitators, mm-hmm. You are the one who will heal yourself. So mm-hmm. I often say that my clients are my best teachers. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm. That's encouraging to hear. Mm-hmm. I feel as someone who I've tried therapy twice. Because once in grad school, and it was I was connected straight to the student center, but it was somebody who wasn't Hmong, and it was new.
That's so new.
I was I knew people who were doing therapy, so I decided I was kind of struggling, so I went to someone, but it didn't quite match. I tried again, and still on that journey, trying to just keep trying, to not give up. So I really appreciate the both of you sharing a little bit about mood disorders. A quick follow up: how common are mood disorders?
Very.
Oh, very. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's something I learned today.
Very
common. Wow.
Doesn't discriminate, all age, race, ethnic group. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. We have our next question from one of our viewers. Is there a different approach that you would like or that you would take as a therapist because your client is Hmong versus a therapist who is not as knowledgeable about the community struggles being Hmong? That's a good question. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah. For me, an approach that I take with my Hmong clients is confidentiality. I just emphasize that because the Hmong community is very small, but it's also very large, and so they're worried about their privacy, and like we all might know each other, or know someone who knows somebody, and so it can be very scary. And so I emphasize and I let them know, like, is it important for you to know who I know in this community, or do you want to know anything about my background? And so I really emphasize that because some clients, they prefer that familial feeling, right? Where or where you're asking, like, who are your parents? They want to know that. Whereas other people are like, don't tell me, I don't want to tell you. You're just my therapist. And so that's one thing that I do differently that I do differently from my Hmong clients versus my non-Hmong clients. And then the second thing I do is just making sure they're understanding the informed consent, making sure that we keep asking them, do they have questions, translating documents to Hmong so that they can understand. And then my last one is understanding the culture component, because if they're spiritual, if they're saying something about shaman, or they're having dreams, or they're seeing spirits, an American person might diagnose them with like psychosis or something, or hallucinating, where we understand that's a cultural thing. And part of my training is to tell non-Hmong therapists, like, don't always assume it's psychosis. You have to give space for that cultural component. And so, if someone tells me, I'm going to rise up to be a shaman next year, and these are the things that I'm experiencing, well, then I consider that as part of their diagnosis or what they're being seen, right? Their overall conceptualization. So those are like the three things off the top of my head that I would do versus a non-Hmong client.
Yeah. So I read the question a little differently, so I kind of took the approach of like the therapeutic approach. I mean, I'm not sure if that's what they're asking, but, I'll answer it in that way. So, a different, a lot of therapists, right? They have their own therapeutic approach to how they do therapy. One thing that, if I know that I have a Hmong client, actually back up a little bit. I told you guys that, I do a lot of CBT. So I also do a lot of DBT stuff. But, when I have a Hmong client, it's very hard to just like start, doing CBT with them. So one of the approach that I take is person-centered. So, I think you guys heard me talking about it a little bit before. It's like really meeting them where they're at. If they just need to learn how to get up again, that's what we're going to work on. And, so we don't have to talk about like reframing, or learning all these like tip skills, So I would say that's like an approach. I know that other therapists may not be knowledgeable about like Hmong and the community, but just know that all of us are competent enough to, work from a person-centered perspective. So yeah.
Wow. But thank you both for sharing that.
So informative. Well, I appreciate trying to process like everything and I really like where, Mindy, you stated that you have to meet in the middle with your clients because if they're having trouble,
you meet them where they're at.
Sorry.
Nope, not
where
in the middle.
they're at, not the middle.
Yeah.
Reversing it back.
Yeah.
See, okay, that was what I was trying to say because a lot of people, they think that you should always meet in the middle. That's what I'm trying to say. But that's not always the case, right? Not like people cannot always give 50%. Some days they can be giving 20, but then that doesn't mean you stick to giving that 50. You have to meet them and give them that 80 that they want.
You're right.
So I really like that you brought that point up because it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this, I feel like this, some of this reflects some of my experience. Like, and I wish this reflected my experience in therapy, like someone who is person-centered. We were doing worksheets, and I want to do worksheets and talk about my feelings. So it is a trial and error. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Thinking. All right. So earlier, Jessica had, invited all of our viewers to respond to a poll question of would you be willing to try therapy? We're so glad to see that two of you expressed interest. Were willing to try therapy. So we encourage you. Stay connected. If you have any questions, feel free to stay connected to our guests today. Or get in touch with someone that you trust. If there is someone around you that you can talk to, we would love to, we just want to encourage both of you for being so brave and just saying, that you'd be willing to try therapy.
Yes.
Yeah. And on that note, with just a little bit of time left before the end of our webinar tonight, I just wanted to give Pam and Mindy some time to just share some final remarks with us.
Yeah. So, the fear of the unknown is so real. And, it's like, anxiety inducing, but, face it, because you don't know what's there. And if it's ugly, if it's nasty, well, at least you can face it and now we can move on to something. So I would say that, get out of your comfort zone, try, if you're afraid of the unknown, it's okay to be afraid. And just know that mental health, depression does not discriminate. Like I was telling you before, it's invisible. I think that, a lot of the signs and symptoms, it comes out as physical, but really, mental health in general, right? You don't see it, but just because you don't see it, right? Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I think being mindful of that too, for yourself, and for others. So.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I have a few final remarks if you'll just be patient with me. The first thing I tell my clients that have stress or depression, so there's 5 things. One would be making sure you're eating a balanced diet. So if you're living off chocolate cake, you're not going to feel good, right? You're going to be tired, sluggish. 2 would be making sure you're getting enough sleep. So 7 to 8 hours, making sure you're getting vitamin D. So you might need like a light lamp, or you might need a supplement, or be out in the sun more. The 4th thing is going to be making sure you're getting exercise. So choose exercise that you like to do. I always tell people you can't pay me to run on the treadmill, but maybe like pickleball or volleyball or badminton. Those are exercises that I would do. And then the last thing is social support is so important. And so if you're at a place where I don't think I want to do therapy, make sure you're hitting these 5 areas, and let's see if that improves your mood and decreases some of your symptoms of depression. The next thing I want to say is, Jessica had talked about, and even Malia a little bit, therapy, I just didn't find the right match. And so if you're looking for a bilingual or a culturally competent therapist, there are some out there. Project Resiliency has done a really good job having a Southeast Asian mental health directory. And so feel free, both me and Mindy are both on that directory. And I try really hard to connect and network with other Hmong professionals so that we can get those referrals in. But again, like Mindy said, even if you can't find a Hmong mental health professional because maybe insurance doesn't cover it or their caseload is full, keep trying. And, I'm doing my best to educate non-Hmong therapists so that they can offer culturally competent services. And so I think, if you are a little bit patient, give a little bit time, sometimes you can make that connection with your therapist. My therapist was not Hmong because there were no Hmong therapists at that time. And then, just the last bit of information, again, you're not alone, and speak up. If you don't want to do worksheets, like Malia said, say it. Say
person-centered. I want you to go from a person-centered perspective. So now you guys know that the words to use, So I'm looking for a person-centered therapist.
So say, I don't want to do worksheets. I thought we were going to talk about my feelings. But worksheets are helpful too, because, as therapists, we want to give you skills and tools. But, Hmong people, we don't speak up as much, and just know that you have a voice and speak up. So those are my final remarks.
I don't do worksheets, by the way, because I know that me personally, I do not like worksheets myself. So, I go from a different approach, but, that's person-centered. That's like, you can definitely ask for a therapist with a person-centered perspective approach.
Wonderful.
Thank you both so much for your final remarks. I definitely learned so much, just talking to you both, and I realized I need to try therapy again. But, again, want to thank you both for being here, and, I know time is really precious to everyone. So just taking your time and even traveling all the way here to have this conversation with us, and especially to our production crew who's working so hard behind the scenes, and co-host as well. Thank you. And to our viewers who are tuning in.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you. I'm so honored. So
No, we had such a great time tonight. We wouldn't do our job if we didn't leave some resources for all of you who have tuned in tonight for us. So, stay connected to us. Stay connected to our guests. If you want to connect with Mindy, her information, will be shared with all of you in this webinar. You'll see her email, her phone number, and where where her business is located. So if you're in the area, reach out. And then if you're, nearby where Pam is, or you want to connect with Pam, her information will also be shared as well with everyone tonight. So feel free to also give her, also reach out to her. In addition to that, we do have our Project Resiliency Warm Line. This is a non-crisis phone number that you can reach out to if you're looking for peer support. What that really means is looking to talk to somebody who understands your experience, your experience. And then the third is we have linked a QR code where you can access a PDF handout that will provide a summary of a lot of the things that we discussed tonight. The link to that PDF handout will also be put in the put in the comments as well. And so thank you all so much for hanging on with us for an extra 2 minutes. We appreciate it. We hope this has been an inspiring, hope-filled conversation for everyone. I know for sure it was for me. And so we just, on that note, want to wish everyone a good night and enjoy the rest of your evening. Henry Farmans.